thank the organizers of this very important symposium, especially my dear friend Sharik as his participation in it. If he tells me to do something, I do it. So. And one of the things you might not know, I have deep roots here in this Hoosier state. Both of my folks, my mother and father, are from Anderson, Indiana, and my ancestors on both sides, my mother and father, came here before Indiana was even a state. They came here in the early 1800s. So I've always resisted this idea that I'm a Hoosier, but I still have deep roots, so I'm always glad to come back to Indiana because I do feel a connection. My topic is looking at giving practices in American mosque, and I use the word exploring because there's nothing definitive about my studies. These are preliminary studies to get a sense, to get a lay of the land of what giving means in mosque. My original findings are based on the 2011 U.S. mosque study, which was a random sample study of about 400 mosques, and the details will be in footnotes and all that in my paper. Or if you have any questions, we could talk about the methodology. But in addition, there was a study that I engaged in that is unpublished of 3 mosques starting in 2014. And then when I got this assignment of looking at giving in mosques, I decided to go back to that 2014 study, and everybody who did a survey, I did follow-up with them and conducted many interviews focused on giving in particular. The 3 mosques, I think, are relatively diverse and represent, to a certain extent, Mosque of America, a large suburban, West Coast, a mid-sized urban, a small university town, southern mosque. So not atypical mosque whatsoever. None of them are African American, but they are very diverse. 2 of them have good-sized populations of African Americans that attend. Basic first point, mosques in America are healthy. If you look on the outside, in particular numbers, very healthy. And the numbers are going to keep on increasing. In particular, the health means that, for instance, 353 is the average attendance in mosques, compared to churches, 186. And the number of mosques that cited that they have had 10% increase is, again, much larger. Almost a third of mosques indicated that they've had increase in attendance of 10% compared to churches. So overall, mosques are healthy. Another indicator of that health is that indicators of high rates of giving are higher levels of income, higher levels of education, and those in the age group over 55. And based on the Pew latest study, 2011, and all other studies of Muslims in America, Muslims do very well when it comes to income and education. They match or even better than the general U.S. population. The exception is age. So the Muslim American community is a much younger community. That you would think that might be a drag on giving. The idea is from 55 until your retirement age, these are the best years of your life, the most stable. The kids have grown up, they've left, and you have more disposable income. Of course, that drops off after retirement. So there is a after retirement age, then giving drops. The younger people are getting set in their career, they have children, so their giving is less. So that would be one drag. Our 3 mosques chosen match basically that picture. they're very similar to U.S. mosque and the American Muslim community in general. So one way to look at the giving rate is to calculate it by looking at the budget of the institution and comparing it to attendance. Now, many churches, if not most churches, do this by membership. But since Muslims don't have any idea what a member is, so that is not a good criteria to use this kind of mathematical formula. Some churches do use attendance, and so it's not out of the question. So comparing budget and attendance, and I am looking at means. So there you have it. In U.S. mosques, based on the 2011 study, $473 per person. And the main point here is simply that Muslims do not give much to their mosque, especially in comparison to Christians and Jews in particular. Comparing to all churches, a little higher, but the 2010 Facts Survey, I don't need to go to any details about what that is, but you know, it is a national survey of all congregations in America. And then I looked at what the Presbyterians, the Southern Baptists, and others reported themselves as to the contributions in their own congregations, and you see it. Your Presbyterians, each person gives annually about $1,200. Southern Baptists, over $1,700. So a vast difference between what Muslims give to their mosque as opposed to what other religious groups give, in particular Christians. Another way of looking at a giving rate is to ask attendees, members, how much do you give? And these are self-reports. And so for our 3 mosques, I did ask the question of mosque attendees, how much do they give? And I also asked them about their income. And so you see the figures, as you might guess. Self-reports of giving are always higher than what seems to be the reality. And the same here. So these figures are higher, but as you see among Christians, they're even higher, right? From what, 1,700, now it's up to 2,800. Of course, Catholics are the outliers in the whole giving thing. The Catholics in all studies show themselves to be much lower, but even higher than Muslims. So that's the basic, second point I want to make is simply that the giving to mosque among Muslim attendees is relatively low. Another way of using self-reporting is to look at their giving as a percentage of their total income. And I could do that with our 3 mosques because it is a study of attendees. And as you can see, the highest in the small mosques was almost 1%. The rest of them are below 1%. Among Christians, it's about 2.5, and then in other studies, they're higher. Christian Smith wrote a book, Passing the Plate, and his citation of 2.5% is for him an embarrassment. His whole book, Passing the Plate, is an attack on Christian giving, a relentless attack on Christians who, how dare them give only 2.5% of their income, So he's bemoaning, and many other, when these statistics came out about 2.5%, everybody, all the researchers, well, especially Christians, were bemoaning the fact, oh my God, how did we get to this? Because they've charted that the percentage was much higher in decades earlier. So 2.5% sounds great for Muslims. One of the results, I think, just to note quickly, is that the low rate of giving means a lower income for the mosque, and it translates into the fact that there are few full-time paid imams in American mosques. 2011, only 36%, as compared to Christian churches where about 90-some% have pastors, right? So I think that's one of the effects of low giving. I looked at some of the variables associated with giving. And in most literature, and we've already heard it, high income, education, and religiosity, which can be translated into attendance, age, and volunteerism. And what my study of the three mosques and the attendees in these three mosques is that high income and education are not associated with high levels of giving. Volunteerism is. In fact, that is probably the most clear association. And so there you have it, volunteers in these mosques who give annually almost $1,000 as opposed to non-volunteers who give about $270. Also, the age group over 55 also has a clear association with high levels of giving. I really don't have time to go over any of that, but just very briefly, I asked the question, why do mosque attendees give so little to their mosque? But one of the questions is, well, maybe they don't give to the mosque, maybe they give to other charitable institutions, that their charitable giving is simply not directed to mosque. And I think there's an argument. In my interviews, mosques were low in their charitable giving. So, and part of it is this idea of zakat. The fiqh, the understanding of most Muslims is that your zakat does not go to the mosque, not to the upkeep of a mosque, right? And so they give their zakat to other organizations, other causes. I don't have time to go into much detail in any of these. But also, beyond that, there is a clear absence of a culture of regular giving in mosques, an absence of a vision of why to give, a theological argument of why you should give. And part of it is the baggage that many Muslims carry from overseas, where a mosque is endowed by a rich patron or it is a government mosque, and therefore a mosque overseas is not a community. You don't donate to the mosque, right? And so I think there's an uphill battle in establishing a new culture of regular giving. Also, mosques are unbelievably inefficient in asking for money. All the best practices of how you solicit money are probably not ignored, but they have no awareness of these best practices. And it's unbelievable. I had one colleague, a researcher in Christian church. He went to a mosque as part of a kind of observation. He couldn't believe the fact that there was no mention whatsoever about money, and the donation box was totally hidden in the corner someplace, Also, and I'll end right here, when when I interviewed people, it's interesting that most of them resisted the idea that they should give regularly. Few pledge, and even fewer have automatic withdrawal donations. And what they said, for the most part, is that they like to give for specific things. And really, when you think about it, that's what zakat, in a sense, kind of taps into. There's a person who's hungry. There's a person that needs water. There's a person that needs something, right? And so, yes, I have to give for this. But for the upkeep of the mosque, for mosque programs, for the salary, there's less motivation. And therefore, I think this is one of the big challenges to the American Muslim community to overcome these deficiencies if their mosques are to grow and to become vital. Thank you.